It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman, and joining us back on the show is Brandon Vogt here with something that you might not expect from him. I'm really excited to talk to you about it. Thanks for being here, Brandon.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kyle.
So I got to first start off with a disclaimer. I am the least informed person on this topic. Like, when Andrea brought this up to me, she was so excited. So this is the best thing that she's ever heard of in her life. And she was explaining it, and I didn't even understand the words that she was saying. Like, Dumbledore's army didn't mean anything to me. I was like, I had no idea. So Catholic Hogwarts is combining Harry Potter with Catholicism, and I'm really excited to hear more about this. So where did the idea come from?
Sure. Well, the idea came from reading the Harry Potter series, this immensely popular series of books and films, best-selling books of all time, written by J.K. Rowling. They have somewhat of a controversial reputation among Catholics. There's a number of Catholics who are a little wary of what they perceive to be promotion of wizardry and occultism and the dark arts and stuff like that. I've sort of seen the best arguments on both sides, the pro-Harry Potter argument, the anti-Harry Potter arguments. I find the former a bit more convincing. This little project that I'm working on, though, isn't a promotion of Harry Potter per se. What it is it uses a small episode from the Harry Potter series as a literary analogy to identify parallels with where we are in the Catholic Church today. And so real briefly, I unpack this analogy way more in the video series, which people can watch at CatholicHogwarts.com. But very briefly, I had an epiphany while I was reading the fifth book in the Harry Potter series, which is called Order of the Phoenix. And in that part of the series, Harry Potter, who's the main figure, he's a young wizarding student at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He realizes that the school and the entire wizarding world are under a serious threat from Lord Voldemort. He's the evil villain of the entire Harry Potter series, a very dark wizard, very immoral, hell-bent on destroying the non-wizarding community and taking control over it. He's basically like the Hitler of the wizarding world. And so Harry starts complaining to his professors that Dumbledore is back to power. He had sort of disappeared for a while. He's back. He's a threat. We need to do something about it. But his teachers in the school, most notably the new headmistress, Dolores Umbridge, don't take him seriously at all. They say, it's not really a serious problem. Dumbledore really isn't back. Instead of preparing the students to get ready for this impending battle with Lord Voldemort, they instead just make them read textbooks and learn dry abstract theory. They're not giving them any sort of practical skills and how to prepare themselves for the battle. So what the students decide to do is take matters into their own hands, and they create what they call Dumbledore's Army, which is sort of this secret underground community of students. They all sort of banded together, and they said, look, if we're not going to be learning the skills that we need from our institutions, from our school in their case, then we need to learn it ourselves. We need to learn these skills. More importantly, we need to practice them with and against each other, so that when the battle comes, we'll be ready. And that sent a light bulb off in my head, because I thought, that's very similar to the position that we Catholics find ourselves in. There's a battle raging around us. Now, I'm not usually one for the sort of culture war type rhetoric. We're not obviously battling violently with the forces that oppose us, but there's a deep spiritual battle. Any Catholic knows this. The culture is increasingly hostile toward our beliefs. We're increasingly out of step with the culture on things like sexuality and marriage and just morality in general, not even to mention our specifically religious beliefs about God and worship and the church and Jesus. So we're in a battle, but we're just not getting the practical skills we need from a lot of our institutions, from our parishes, from our schools. And so I realized, look, we need to learn this ourselves. We need to start learning the practical skills specifically to talk about these things with our friends, our family, our coworkers who disagree with us, and we need a place to practice them with and on each other. And so that's what this whole video series lays out. Again, it's at CatholicHogwarts.com, and I'm basically making a case that it's time for a Catholic Dumbledore's Army. Just as Harry and his friends started Dumbledore's Army in their school, we Catholics need to band together and start something like that in the church today.
And in the video, it does help break things down. It makes it so much easier to understand. You compare it to basketball. So like if someone were to come in and say, we're going to get better at basketball, but you don't need your basketballs for this, we're just going to read books, that wouldn't make any sense. But how does that translate to our faith? I totally understand the theory versus the practical aspects. What are some of the practical things that we should and need to be working on to be effective?
Sure. It was a revelation to me when I sent out an email to all of my email subscribers, like 70,000 Catholics, and I asked them, what's the number one thing you struggle with your faith? And by far, the most popular answers were some version of, I struggle to talk about my faith with loved ones, with coworkers, with friends, especially about the hot button issues. So things like same-sex marriage, transgenderism, abortion, contraception, the sexual abuse crisis, all of these prickly issues that when they come up in conversation, we get really nervous or tongue-tied and afraid. And I realized that some parishes and some schools, not many, but some, talk about these things maybe in an abstract way. Maybe they gesture to them in a homily or in a class, but really I'm not aware of almost any parishes or dioceses or schools that are doing a really good job training Catholics in how to practically talk about these things. I raised the hypothetical questions in the video. When was the last time in your parish that you had a class on how to discuss same-sex marriage with friends or loved ones or coworkers? When was the last time that you were trained in how to understand the intricacies of the transgender issue and how to talk with transgender friends or family members? And I think the question kind of answers itself. Most of us just don't have any of this sort of experience. We're just not getting these sort of practical skills from our institution. So again, that's what I'm hoping to help fix.
We're talking with Brandon Vogt, who launched CatholicHogwarts.com. 4 videos out by now and one more on the way, and really breaks this down and gives you some ideas on how we can be really leaning more on the practical aspects of our faith and the practical methods of evangelization and apologetics. And would you say that this is apologetics in and of itself, or is it application of apologetics?
Yeah, I like the term practical apologetics, although I typically shy away from either one of those because that word's loaded for a lot of Catholics. But basically, technically, that's what I think we Catholics are really missing the boat on, and what we need to learn ourselves if we're not getting it from our institutions. It's not just the content of the beliefs. That would be just apologetics, how to give a good reason for why you believe what you believe. But there's a whole nother art form in how to convey that persuasively, how to winsomely present the Catholic view in a way that it's compelling to another person. And so both of those pieces, I think we need to get together. That's why Harry Potter and his friends, they didn't dismiss book learning. There's certainly something valuable about learning information about important topics, but that needs to be coupled with the application of that information. How do I use, in Harry Potter's case, these spells and potions that I'm learning? How do I decide when and how to implement that? We Catholics need to learn something similar. It's not enough just to know, for example, the best arguments against same-sex marriage. You need to know how to delicately and winsomely convey that to someone.
And I agree with you that this is not happening in our churches and our schools in the manner that you're describing. Is this something that could and should be done in our institutions like churches and schools? Or do you think that there's, for some reason, it works better outside of the institutional church to be able to do some of these practical things? Like the church and the school might be able to give us some of the theoretical things, and then we need something like what you're presenting here at CatholicHogwarts.com for really working on those practical aspects.
That's a great question. I haven't thought too carefully about that, so I'd want to think about it more before giving a definitive answer. But I mean, I think certainly schools and parishes could do something like this. For whatever reason, they haven't. I think, like you intimated, schools are very good at conveying facts and information. I don't think they're so good at sort of the practicum, the practical application, the real world implementation of a lot of these things. Parishes, I think, could perhaps serve this sort of role, but I think part of the power of Dumbledore's army in the Harry Potter series was that it was sort of a bottom-up movement. It wasn't something the institution prescribed and just sort of fed to the students. Part of its power was that it emerged from the students' own desires. They're the ones that fueled this movement. And so because they had a certain level of ownership behind it, there was a massive amount of passion and excitement and energy around it, where I'm not quite sure you'd get those same sentiments if it was just sort of a required part of your school curriculum, or if it was just one offering among many in the parish. There's something valuable about lay Catholics in particular coming together at the ground level to develop something to stir up their faith.
And I think it will be great for individuals or families or a group of people that want to get together and join in this and do it and learn together. But also, I do imagine that it would be a good resource for people that work for the church, for people that work in the schools, or for people that are homeschooling or whatever, to maybe steal some ideas and implement it in their teaching, and maybe even kind of restructure things after kind of going through your program and saying like, it gives me a lot of ideas. Do you think that might happen?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's already happening. We've got thousands of people that are going through this video series from all walks of life: priests, school teachers, deacons, religious, people involved in parish and schools, parents, grandparents, everybody. So, yeah, I think the tips and strategies here can be applied basically in any context.
So you call it the Catholic version of Dumbledore's army. If you had to rename it, what would you call it?
Oh, I don't know. I was thinking about this because there were some people that said, oh, you got to be careful about, copyright and trademarks and all that kind of stuff. So I was actually a little leery about sort of describing it in this way, Catholic Dumbledore's Army. I got some legal advice that I think we're fine. I think it falls under the fair use, criteria. But anyway, I don't know. Maybe pick a good saint that modeled this particularly effectively. Of course, Thomas Aquinas, who I mentioned in this video series. I make a connection between Harry Potter and Thomas Aquinas. They both followed a similar strategy to becoming masters in their craft. I think Aquinas is a model of how best to handle people who disagree with the church, because he responds with imminent charity. He's very careful not to misrepresent the arguments of people who disagree with him. In fact, in his Summa Theologia, he often presents opposing arguments even more strongly than those who believe them. And so he sort of ramps up the strength of the argument before responding to it. And so he's a great model. So maybe it's time for, an Aquinas army or something like that.
All right. Well, people can check out CatholicHogwarts.com. And again, there's 4 videos already available that you can watch through. And then the 5th one will be coming soon. And I know I've learned a lot from this. And I think it's important that people watch this to challenge themselves and challenge the church to say, okay, what are some things that we're missing and how can we improve on the way that we're doing things? So thank you so much for bringing this to our attention, Brandon Vogt, and encourage people to check out CatholicHogwarts.com for more inspiration from you.
Great. Thanks, Kyle.